Well, good morning, church. It's good to see you, good to be with you. My name is Cameron Lee. I'm the community pastor here at NCC, and it's a joy to share with you this morning, both in the room and those joining us online together. 18 years ago, I was a freshman in high school, and I was trying out for the basketball team. Now, it was a large high school, so there were three teams, a freshman team, a JV team, and a varsity team, and about 80 guys trying out. So, that's pretty good odds, right? There are three teams. Those are deep rosters. Maybe there's a chance. And I remember one moment in one of those days of tryouts, they lined us up by height. You might be able to see where this is going. I was standing there, had my friend Robbie to my left, and 78 of our closest friends to my right. Robbie was the only guy out there who was any shorter than I was. And he was a pretty good athlete. I don't remember how good I was. I tried to, think that I was great, but I don't know. But there were multiple cuts, multiple days of tryouts, most sore I've ever been in my life, on and on. And finally Thursday, Friday morning, they had posted the final roster, and I walked up before classes, and I looked, and my name was not on the list. I had not made the cut, but you know who had made it? My buddy Robbie. The only guy out there who was any shorter than I was had made the team, yet I had not. And, I can make all kinds of excuses and all kinds of things, but somewhere along the line, I learned a part of why Robbie had made the cut and I had not. Robbie, throughout the tryouts, that moment where we're competing against each and every one of these 79 other guys for a spot. I'll be honest, I wasn't competing against half of them because I knew, they were better than I was. I was just competing against a few. But Robbie took that opportunity and he encouraged others. He cheered them on. While he was on the sidelines during scrimmages and stuff like that, he was out there encouraging these guys who I was looking at as competition. Robbie and I recognized that there were a lot of things out of our control that day. My height always has been, always will be completely outside of my control. The amount of training or lack thereof that I had been through in that off season, in that moment, outside of my control. How good everybody else was and how many others there were trying out for how many spots on these three teams there were, completely outside of my control. But Robbie recognized there was one thing within his control, and that was the opportunity he had to encourage and support these other guys. And that's what ended up setting him apart and allowed him to be a part of the team. There are a lot of things in our lives that we find that are outside of our control. It's not hard for us to start to think about them. It's easy for us to start to have anxiety and concern about them, to worry about all of these things that are outside of our control. And there are. The truth is, there are a few things that are within our control. And that's what I want to focus on today. This title of my message, it's in my control. We so often focus on those things out of our control, but let's start to focus on the things that are in my control. And so, just like me being at the shorter end of this spectrum, there's a guy in Scripture who was known for his height or lack thereof as well, a man by the name of Zacchaeus. And we read his story in Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Now, before we even get to the story of Zacchaeus, we have this precursor and a reminder that this isn't just a story in a nutshell in and of itself, but it's part of a grander, bigger narrative and a bigger story. Remember, Jesus is traveling all around this region that we know today as Israel and Palestine, and he's praying and he's healing and he's performing miracles and he's preaching and teaching and talking about all of these things and trying to help people understand the kingdom of earth and the kingdom of heaven and all of these things that can be difficult to understand. And it says he was passing through. Now, I'll go ahead and give you a little hint of what's to come, is that this story happens while he's passing through. And his passing through ends up taking a little bit more time than just simply driving straight through the town. And I think this isn't my message, but I think there's something here for us as a reminder that maybe at times we need to stop simply passing through and recognize what opportunities are right there in front of us, opportunities to love, opportunities to care for others, and to make a difference in their lives. And Jesus had entered Jericho, was passing through. He wasn't planning on staying. This wasn't apparently a part of his plan. In verse 2, there was a man by the name of Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus is a new person, a new face within Scripture, so we're going to learn everything we need to know about this guy right here. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. Like, these are the top two attributes that he has, that he was the chief tax collector. Not your run-of-the-mill tax collector, but the chief. And I don't know how y'all feel about tax collectors these days, but back in Bible times, they weren't the favorite people. See, not only were they taking money from people, but they were taking more than they should have. They weren't known for being the most honest people out there because they would take more than was required of them and they would keep the surplus. So the fact that it says that he was wealthy is an emphasis on the lack of integrity that he has. And the fact that he has done this for a while, that's what has made him chief tax collector. He has worked his way up through the ranks. He has taken a lot from people, and that has made him wealthy. So he may not be the most favorite guy in town. His wealth isn't just a number here. It's a definition of his behavior, of how he treats others. And we'll talk more about that. Then in verse 3, he wanted to see who Jesus was. Remember, Jesus is passing through. Zacchaeus is like, I've heard about this guy. I'd like to see him for myself. But because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. Well, some of you maybe are like me. When you walk into a room like this even, you start to take notice of who's standing in front of you or who's sitting in front of you, that I don't want to sit behind the person who's 7'6", much less probably 6'6", because I want to be able to see, past them. So I'll move to one side or the other. But this crowd had grown. This crowd was huge, and there was nowhere for Zacchaeus to see over them. And I was thinking about like a parade, which I think is very kind of similar to this, of Jesus passing through on this route. And I think back to like being a kid, where the people in front of you, you don't know them, but they're like, here, you come up to the front. You're not going to block my view. It's fine. You get the candy, all that, good stuff they're throwing out, handing out, and all of that. Go ahead, right? You can have a seat on the curb. You can stand. I don't care. I can see right over you. They could have done the same thing for Zacchaeus. Well, this is a guy who year after year, time after time, has taken their hard-earned money only to give him a better house, a bigger chariot, whatever he wanted, he could have because he had taken so much. Verse 4, so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore-fig tree to see Jesus, since Jesus was coming that way. Again, he knew the path Jesus was taking. He knew where Jesus was headed. There was a crowd around, but Zacchaeus, he figured something out. He figured out if he got to a different level, he could have an opportunity with just he and Jesus. He wouldn't be trying to dodge through the crowd of seeing, a little glimpse here between these heads and, between these feet or wherever. And it leads me to think that maybe we need to have a similar kind of posture as Zacchaeus. This is the first point today, that we need a new perspective. We need a new perspective. Zacchaeus recognized that the perspective he normally had wasn't going to satisfy him. It wasn't going to work. He needed a new perspective. And I think today we find ourselves in places much like he did, with a crowd of people and a whole lot of noise and commotion and things going on that make it really hard for us to have a time with Jesus, to have a time that's just Jesus and me spending with him, because everybody wants something of us. Everybody wants to put themselves in a better position. Some even well-meaning people trying to promote themselves rather than help us to do that. And I think sometimes maybe we need to take a step up to look above the crowd, above the noise, and above what's going on so that we can have that time, just us and Jesus. And maybe, just maybe, sometimes up isn't the right thing for us. And instead, we need to take some time and recognize that if we take a step down, get a new perspective a little bit lower, we're still missing the crowd and the noise, and it's a whole lot easier for us to see Jesus when there's not as much going on around us. Y'all, there's a lot of noise today. There's a lot of people. There's a lot trying to get our attention. And we've got to do something different if we're going to have any meaningful interaction with Jesus. We've got to change some things. We've got to gain a new perspective. See, for Zacchaeus, there were a lot of things out of his control. His height was out of his control. The crowd around him was out of his control. His past in this moment was out of his control. The path Jesus was taking, like, Jesus, if you could just go that way, I could go stand on the top of the hill and everybody could see a whole lot better because it would be like stadium seating. It would be awesome. That would be great. Completely out of his control. But what was in his control? His perspective in awaiting Jesus' arrival. And I can't help but think that sometimes we allow the noise and the crowd to distract us and distance us from Jesus. There are a lot of voices, a lot of conversations, a lot of things trying to gain our attention. Very few are constructive, very few are beneficial, and very, very few care at all about your eternity and about you experiencing this life-changing life with Jesus. The story continues. Verse 5. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Jesus reaches this spot like right in front of Zacchaeus, almost as if it's been Jesus' plan all along. We didn't realize. But Jesus gets there, looks up at him, says, Zacchaeus, calls this man by name, which is an incredible thing. Zacchaeus has been excited about this day, and that's why he's there, just to catch a glimpse of Jesus. And there are all these people around, and for some reason, out of everybody there, he calls Zacchaeus out by name. Might have been because he was the only one in a fig tree, I don't know, but he called him out. Jesus called him by name. And I love the instructions that Jesus gives him. Come down immediately. Like right now, we don't have time to waste. This isn't something to pull out a pro-con list and figure out, should I come down the tree? Is it better for me to come down the tree or should I stay? Any of that. Not wasting any time. Not planning around his schedule. Saying, I must stay at your house today. Now this verb stay can mean stay, can mean remain, can mean abide. Like, we don't really know if this is hours, days, what this is, what this looks like. And typically when we have people, come stay, we want to know, how long are you staying, right? Like, what is this looking like? How long are y'all going to be here? How long is this, this going to be the case? We don't really know. But he says, I must stay at your house today. Verse 6, so he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. So Jesus says, come down immediately, and Zacchaeus' response is he comes down at once. Like there is no hesitation. This is beautiful. I wish we were all a little bit more like Zacchaeus in this sense that when God calls us that we can respond immediately. And just how simple this is. There's no hesitation. There's no question. There's no thinking about, what do I have left on the schedule? Is there any food in the house? How clean is my house? When we have guests over at our house, we typically have a rule that says we'll clean and keep it straight the first time you come visit. After that, we'll pick up some stuff, but we need you to remember what it can look like, okay? We figure that's pretty fair. You make a strong first impression, maybe that's what people remember. But Zacchaeus he apparently doesn't play by that rule. Like he doesn't care what his house looks like. He doesn't care about any of this. And this wasn't his plan when the day started. Like his day was about just like catching a little glimpse of this Jesus guy and seeing, I want to know a little bit more about what this guy is all about. So, leads us to our second point today. Zacchaeus had gotten a new perspective and now was starting down this new path. A new path. He recognized that there was a lot outside of his control in this scenario. There was a lot outside of his control of Jesus would call him by name. Probably wasn't even in his wildest of dreams that Jesus would do that. And what Jesus calls him to is not like, hey, let's go get coffee. It's, I'm coming to your house today. He couldn't control, where Jesus went, what he said, what Jesus wanted to do. The only thing he could control was his response to Jesus. His response to what Jesus was calling him to do was the only thing in his control. And I think we love this narrative and this idea of, and it's not too hard to kind of put ourselves up in a tree. Maybe I relate more to Zacchaeus than you do, me being short. I don't know. But, thinking about Jesus calling us out, I think that's easy and like that must be awesome to have been Zacchaeus. Jesus just call you by name. But we read later in Scripture in Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, this verse, Jesus says, here I am. I stand at the door. This is like the door of your heart. This is the door to you. I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. That this calling that Jesus gives Zacchaeus isn't just for him, but it's something he wants from each and every one of us. He wants a relationship with us. He wants to spend time with us, not time on a time frame of, hey, I want to spend one night at your house. I want to spend a couple hours eating lunch at your house. Jesus says, I want to spend time with you. I want to eat with you. I want to break bread with you. I want to stay with you. I want to have a friendship, a relationship with you. This new path that Zacchaeus starts down isn't one that's just for him, but it's one that's made available to each and every one of us. Verse 7, all the people saw this. I love that it says all the people. Like, remember, there's this huge crowd and all of the people. Like, there is one thing they are united around. They're excited to see Jesus or interested or, want to just be there because everybody else is there. But all the people saw this and began to mutter, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner. Jesus. Look at all us good church folk over here. There's a lot of great options. Miss Susie can make some great fried chicken. I'm sure you'd love going, with her. Or we've already got something in the crock pot. We could share some with you. Tommy over here, he's a great cook. You should go to his house and eat with him. But Jesus, why are you going over? Do you know who this guy is? I mean, you called him by name. Maybe Zacchaeus was a popular name back in the day and he just got lucky. I don't think that was the case. I think Jesus knew who he was, but they're like, apparently you know his name and you don't know anything about him because he is the last person out here whose house you should go to. Jesus, you're God. You know things. Why are you going there? Why are you going to his house? Why do you want to go spend time with him? And of all places, why are you going to his house to do that? See, when you start to go down a new path with Jesus, some people might start saying some things. Even sometimes the good church folk might start saying some things. I mean, not here, right? Not join us online. If you're online, people in here, they're not like this. These are all incredible people in the room, online, all of that. So I know that's not us. We would never say anything about somebody. Right? Right? We would never criticize somebody and say, oh, I don't know. Jesus, are you really doing something in their life? I mean, you need to, for sure, but I don't know if you really are. And somehow, some way, I think maybe we just get a little jealous of what Jesus is doing in their life and wish he was doing it a little bit more in ours. As can be the case with criticism, there sometimes is a sense of truth within this criticism. Like, Jesus is going to stay with this guy who is a sinner. Yeah. Zacchaeus would say that's probably true. I wish all of you hadn't said that and all of you pointed that out. This is the greatest day in my life that Jesus would want to stay at my house, want to spend time with me, and all of you are trying to interrupt that and mess that up. People were talking. People were saying things. And Zacchaeus felt like he needed to respond. And so he does. Verse 8, Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord. And I think there's something there for us that Zacchaeus heard this criticism. He heard these doubters. He heard these haters. He heard these people who were against him, who were against everything that Jesus was doing in his life and against this new path that he was started down. And he takes his response, not right back at him, but he takes it to God. And I think sometimes we are so prone to retaliate, to come back at somebody. And I wonder what it would look like if we were a little bit more likely to take things to God and allow him to handle some things and take them out of our hands and out of our control. Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now, right in this moment, I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount." I started with a story in high school, and I remember hearing this story of Zacchaeus, a number of times growing up, and sometime around the time I was in algebra. And I'm thinking, okay, we take everything Zacchaeus has, we're going to divide that in half, okay? He's wealthy, he's fine. I couldn't do that, but he can do that. He'll be all right. And then we take everything that's left, and if he's cheated anybody out of anything, I'm going to repay them 4 times what he owed them. Now, remember, we know he's wealthy, and it's because of how he had interactions and business dealings and all of that there was a lot that was kind of shady and messed up. And so he had done this a lot. And every time my mind starts going through this, I can't help but think, Zacchaeus, you better be careful. Not gonna be left with anything. Like, I don't even know if you got enough to afford this. I mean, you could have just repaid the people. Why are you repaying them 4 times? Like that seems excessive. I don't know that you can do that. But see, Zacchaeus hasn't just allowed Jesus to call him out of the tree and to dinner. Zacchaeus, in this moment, has become a new man. He's become a new person with a new outlook on life, a new purpose within him. God is doing something in and through him. And his life used to be about more and more and more and more for myself, regardless of what it does to other people, regardless of what that looks like for them, regardless of the cost. But now he realizes what he has isn't for himself. He starts living in a new way, the new purpose and a new outlook on life. So remember, the people had muttered. Zacchaeus responds, says all this, and finally Jesus chimes in. Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham." Now these people were complaining because this guy was a sinner and like the worst of the worst, and he wasn't happy with them, and they weren't happy that Jesus was going to Zacchaeus' house. And now Jesus says, "Today salvation has come to this house." Jesus knows that there is life change, and what he's hearing from Zacchaeus is a response of what Jesus has already done on the inside. And Scripture says when we begin a relationship with Jesus, that we are a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come, that he is doing a new work within us, making us a new creation, and he's done that too. And I love this phrase, the son of Abraham. These were good Jewish folk that Jesus was with, and so saying that this man too is a son of Abraham says, this guy's right there with the rest of you now. This guy's right there with you. He is one of you. You need to welcome him in and look at him differently, because there is something new that has gone on within him, and he is a new man. And then Jesus finishes, "For the Son of Man," for Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. That is a verse that's often just pulled out and shared on its own, because that was Jesus' purpose in coming, in the grand scheme of things, to seek and to save the lost. Was his purpose in Jericho, going through that day to seek. He sought out Zacchaeus and brought salvation in a way that only Jesus can. And that's what he does for us as well. That's what he makes available to us today, to seek us out, to provide salvation not just from something, but allow us in that salvation to experience life with Jesus. Remember, Zacchaeus got a new perspective, started on this new path, now has a new persona. He has a new identity. He's got a new purpose within him. He is a new creature. He's a new man. And he's made that evident through this of what Jesus had already done on the inside, he was doing and showing on the outside. Not because of what he showed on the outside made him any more saved, but it made him authentic. That the inside and the outside matched. That he wasn't faking something in one place and real in the other, but he was real through and through. There were a lot of things outside of Zacchaeus' control. He couldn't control what other people said, though he probably wanted to. He couldn't control how they said it, but I bet he wanted to. He couldn't control where they said it, what tone they said it, or in front of whom they said it. This was the greatest day in his life. But for him, these people, these good people, trying to tear down and take all of that away from him. Zacchaeus could control what changes he wanted to make on the outside, to make the outside match the inside, to demonstrate to the world what Jesus had done within him. Not because there was anything, special or magical about what he did. But he didn't care about money anymore because he had this relationship with Jesus. This didn't matter as much to him anymore. Everything he had worked for, everything he had tried to gain, he recognized he did it in all the wrong ways. It wasn't healthy. They weren't to prove anything or to be something that he wasn't, but to be authentic, for the outside to match the inside. There are a lot of things out of our control in this life. There are a lot of things that we can think about that often bring worry and concern and stress in our lives. Some we share with others, some we don't. There are a lot of things that we wish we could control, that we wish we could change in our classrooms, in our workplaces. In our world, there's a lot we wish we could change so that if we were in charge, maybe things would look different. But friends, I don't know about you, but I'm not in charge of a lot of those things. There's a lot of that that's outside of my control. There's a lot that my worry and my concern and my stress doesn't help make anything better. It only makes me worse. But when I begin to look at what I do have control over, that I do have control over gaining a new perspective with Jesus, to ground myself, to center myself, to recognize and know who I'm spending time with. Spend a little bit less time maybe with the crowd and all the noise that only seems to grow and grow and grow, and spend a little bit more time just me and Jesus. Maybe today that's a step for you. Maybe today it's time for you to, like Zacchaeus, to have a new persona. Jesus has done something on the inside of you, but there's some things on the outside that don't match the inside. Jesus is like, I've changed you. It's time to let go of some of these things and to move onward and forward and into what I have for you. It's time to make some changes. And I would encourage you, like Jesus encouraged Zacchaeus, do it immediately. Don't sit on it. Don't dwell on it. Don't wait. If Jesus is calling you to something, don't wait any longer. Don't consider it any longer. It's time to take that step, time to follow. Maybe today you start taking that path. Not the one where that's led you astray time and again. Not the one where you act and feel like you're in control all the time, but the one that allows Jesus to be Lord over your life, to step into a relationship with Him and recognize I need some things in my life to change. In some ways, maybe some things look good, like Zacchaeus. I've got a lot going for me. He had his wealth, he had his job, he had a lot going for him. But he recognized none of that was worth living for. So in a moment, we'll pray, and if you'd like to take that step to begin a relationship with Jesus, we'll give you that opportunity. Let's stand in the room and pray. Jesus, we thank you for this story from your word that's not just a story, but a real life event. A man by the name of Zacchaeus, a man that in a lot of ways maybe we can relate to. God, we thank you for the hope that you give us through what we've been able to see change in his life. And God, I pray that today you would help us, you would allow us to take steps toward following you. Maybe first steps, maybe maybe continue to grow in our relationship with you. If you're here in the room and you feel like it's time for a new perspective, just you and Jesus, I encourage you, don't wait. Don't wait till this gathering is over. Don't wait till you're home and you've got some time. If that's you this morning, come down to the front, take some time praying, just you and Jesus. It doesn't matter what anybody else in the crowd says or thinks. Take that time, even right now while we're praying, that you can begin to get a new perspective. And God, I pray for those who today need to get a new persona. That God, you have done a work on the inside, but it's time for the outside to match what you have done. There are some things to let go of, some things to repent of, some things to move away from, and some things that need to happen to continue to grow. So God, I pray that you would give us boldness to step into that, to take those steps, to live authentic lives where the inside of what you have done, the new creation you have made within us is evident to all around us. And we can't help but to show. Maybe there's a step that you are calling us to take. That maybe like Zacchaeus, we weren't planning to when we woke up this morning. Well, maybe today is the day to make your faith public in baptism. Today is the day to join a volunteer team. Today is the day to follow the call that Jesus has placed on your life, whatever it is. He calls us immediately. So Jesus, help us to respond in that. And for those who are ready to begin a relationship with Jesus, to step down a new path to follow him, I encourage you, just pray something similar to this right along with me. Jesus, I know I've messed up and I've made mistakes, but as best as I know how, I want to follow you. And I believe in you, Jesus, in your death on a cross, your resurrection 3 days later, and as best as I know how, I want to follow after you. If that's you in this room, I'm gonna count to 3. Just lift up your hand just to solidify this moment between you and Jesus. And if you're online, just click raise a hand. Just saying, Jesus, I've taken this step. I'm a follower of you now. Count of 3, just lift your hand up. 1, 2, 3. Jesus, we thank you for the new life that you are bringing about within us, for the steps you are calling us to take. And God, help us to follow after you, to not hesitate, live into that. And we know, Jesus, that you are doing something in and through this room, that you are changing lives. You are not just changing destinies, but you are changing lives. You're healing relationships. You're restoring people. And God, we give you thanks for all that you are doing, both within these walls, those joining us online. Thank you, Jesus.